Yeah, looks like it's working. Not sure if anyone will be awake to see this, if anyone's gonna be here, anybody's gonna show up. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It's been a long time since I've streamed. Something like 9 months, maybe. I probably should get back to streaming, reading from the fundamentals. Out of all the Nimrod de Rosario books I've read, the fundamentals are my favorite. They're the first ones that I read. I read the fundamentals first. Then I read The Secret History. And then I went to The Mystery of Bellicina Vilca. And I've been told that's the opposite order that you're meant to read it in. You're supposed to read The Mystery of Bellicina Vilca first, because it's easier. It's like a soft entry. And I've discussed that before, I think in another live stream. It says my stream quality is poor. I wonder what that means. Do I care? No. I read the fundamentals first, and I liked the challenge of it. I liked how hard it was to read. When I began studying, when I started with Rosicrucianism, I did concentration exercises, which I've also talked about on this channel before. So I enjoyed reading the fundamentals because it's so dense that reading the books themselves are a concentration exercise of their own. Focusing and reading to comprehension requires an immense amount of energy. And I appreciate the challenge. Doesn't mean I always understand all of it, but I appreciate the amount of work that goes into it, and I get a lot when I do find comprehension in it. And I enjoyed The Secret History. I got a lot from that as well. I enjoyed the narrative part of it less. I like more straight to the meat and potatoes, less filler. But I appreciated the narrative about John Dee. And I thought it was good supplemental. It had good supplemental value to the fundamentals. And naturally, I had to read Mystery of Bellicina Vilca first. And I still haven't finished Volume 2. I haven't got Volume 2 in the mail yet. It's delayed. Apparently, it's hard to get right now. But, and I'm just speaking from personal experience now, I got less from Mystery of Bellicina Vilca than I did the other two books. And in retrospect, so far, I feel like I could say I don't need it. In addition, I have never felt like I need any other sources besides the books themselves. I've had a lot of people recommend different sources to me, but I have never felt the urge to dive into other sources. People are like, oh, Gustavo Brundino, Croy Romero, Jose Aragon. And there's different books, Knights of Lucifer, such and such. I've always just thought, why do I need them? Why? I'll just stick to the fundamentals. Fundamentals have everything. Why do I need anything else? And I think the appeal is easier. It's easier. Go to these people and they'll speak in a way that you understand. But I don't trust that. I don't trust ease of entry. I feel like I want the most realistic experience. And if I find myself feeling unhappy with the rawest experience, and I feel the urge to, man, I just wish this were easier. That just introspectively, I think that's weak. I shouldn't give in to weakness. I shouldn't humor those feelings like, man, wish it were easier. I wish this seat were softer. I wish my job was easier. I wish my life was easier. I wish it was easier to reach the finish line. I understand that sentiment, but I don't like it when I see it in myself. That's just personally. And that's why I like the fundamentals and why I'm glad I read it first. And why I've always felt that's all you need. And ever since the beginning, I've heard of how strange and mysterious the events surrounding Felipe Mariano's death were. How he supposedly was immaculately conceived. His mother was not impregnated by another man. He was like this Jesus Christ figure. And he worked for the government. He had ties with like CIA, secret services, deep parts of the government. That's public record. That's not even theory. So all the mystery surrounding it was enough to make me think he's probably murdered by the people closest to him. So why would I seek knowledge from any of the people in his nearest circle? But more importantly, why would I need to when I have the fundamentals? I have always felt, and I still feel to this day, I don't need those other sources. Nobody does. And with how strongly he cautions, I'll get to that, against confusion, disorientation, and weakness, the desire for an easier path, giving in to weakness, fear. I've tried to stay away from those other sources. One person a couple months ago in my comments recommend Croy Romero. And I know who this person is too, by the way, if you're watching. This particular individual who recommended Croy Romero in one of my posts, I know who you are. I know how you talk. And I said, yeah, I would be open to using my own discernment, but still, I don't need that. I don't need that. I have the book. I have the fundamentals. I can dedicate the rest of my life to comprehending them. That's all I need. I don't need Croy Romero, even if he is legit. But some people don't think he is. Some people feel very strongly that he's not legit. Some people think that Felipe Moyano himself was not legit. It's dangerous to delve into things that could confuse you, but you shouldn't be afraid. That's what Luciferic grace is. That's the Luciferic graceful attitude, the Luciferic funny attitude. It's funny. It's all a show. That's why I say, stay tuned. It's all just a show. You're participating in a play, a narrative, a dream that's not yours. So it's very confusing hearing conflicting narratives. And I recently encountered a new narrative. And at first, my sole reaction was, great. I just felt like I had things sort of figured out. And now, once again, back into confusion. But I resisted the despair that would be attached to that and thought, let's just check this out. Let's do some reading. So that's what I did last night. I spent the night reading through the conspiracy against the Hyperborean wisdom. Something which was created 5 days ago, a document that was dated 5 days ago. And we must keep in mind, you and I, viewer, that this document itself could be misinformation designed to confuse and disorient people. But, viewer, we must also not be afraid. Because there's nothing to be afraid of. We'll just keep playing our part in this play. And remember where we're from. Where we're actually from. Who we actually are. And not get attached to anything here. The emotions will make you attached. They'll bring you close and identify with you with the drama. And you just have to smile to give yourself courage. I felt good about my last video I made. I felt good that I made it short, to the point, concise. I used direct lines from the fundamentals and the secret history, but I didn't do any reading specifically. So I felt that who cares how I felt about it? But it got some attention. And I got some comments on it. And I shared this comment in a post about Jose M. Heru Aragon. Heru Aragon plagiarized the work of Nimrod and tried to make profit with our ancient wisdom. His dirty deeds are well known for those living in Argentina. He was part of the network comprising the Cordoba Provincial Police Force and the Buenos Aires Intelligence 601 Battalion. There's evidence of him implying gross relationships with Grodies using ritual masks. This might shock those Virias from the Anglosphere who were never told the whole story, but it's true. So I read that, and I was just like, okay. I wasn't going to look into him anyway, but that's interesting to know. This fellow right here, this one right here. Joined in December. And this one recommended that I do Balachina Vilka videos. Asked me at the beginning of the year if I was going to do Balachina Vilka next. Thanks for tuning in. Alright, let's look at this a little bit. I read this last night. It's in Spanish. I translated it, read through the whole thing. I'm going to try to summarize it for you. Comes in 5 parts. It's the hypothesis. What happened to the original texts? The octra. Distortions of mystery of Balachina Vilka. And the Imperial Messiah. Can't remember offhand what the Imperial Messiah stated, but let's go through a little bit of this together. Let's investigate. So, to begin, this individual or group of individuals theorizes that someone else wrote the fundamentals of the Hyperborean wisdom, as well as the secret history of the Tullgesellschaft and what was originally called the Strange Adventure of Dr. Signagel, I believe. Yeah, there it is. Strange Adventure of Arturo Signagel, which contains the 2 books, The Letter of Balachina Vilka and The Story of Kurt von Suberman. That would be volume 1 and 2, I believe. These 2 would be The Secret History, The Synarchic Siege, which was supposedly destroyed. One of these is Fundamentals. But this individual proposes the idea that basically all of the novel Balachina Vilka is a forgery, and the people who conspired to make this forgery intended on the masses gravitating toward the novel and never delving into the fundamentals, because the novel is much lighter of a read and the fundamentals are so dense to where the reader will read the novel and when he gets to the fundamentals be so discouraged by its difficulty that they just go back to the novel and they make that their area of study. To synthesize this theory, and they make a few correlations. They talk about the superstructure that the mystery of Belachina Vilca itself is meant to be a cultural phenomenon that people get phagocytized by. They get sucked into it. They make all the symbols, the stone men, and they quote the fundamentals here. Now, if we recall that the soul can only manifest itself in a suitable structure or vehicle, and that without structure there is no possible psychic manifestation, and we hermetically admit that both the microcosm and macrocosm are analogous structures, we'll be in a position to establish other important correspondences. The psychic subject of the microcosm in effect manifests itself as a rational subject in archetypal memory, as a cultural subject in the cultural structure, and as a conscious subject in the sphere of light, just as occurs with the manifestation of the demiurge in the macrocosm. Such a manifestation is analogous to the soul, an anima mundi, and is expressed in the structures of the cosmic mind in the form of aspects, phases, or faces of the demiurge. On the archetypal plane, with the aspect of beauty or active intelligence. In the superstructures of external cultures, with the aspect of love or wisdom, and in the external world, in the spaces of meaning, with the aspect of will or power, incarnated in a sacred race. And the author of this hypothesis acknowledges how hard it is to comprehend that. But the important thing is to know that superstructures exist and that they are a trap which one must escape in order to continue the spiritual path. Free yourself from karma. The superstructures constitute a dramatic plot of karma. You have to have a luciferic, graceful attitude to escape. Terrible secret of Maya. Here they assert attack Jose Aragon and Orlando Croy. And yes, this part I agree with very, very much. You already have the fundamentals. Why are you seeking a master? Sages. Make contact with Orlando Croy, and not just any contact, but contact with a submissive attitude as if they were sages, a sacralizing attitude of devotion, accepting everything they say without critically questioning it, as if they were great masters. That's like what they describe as being phagocytized. You get just absorbed. It consumes you. So you submit to what they're saying. They make it easy for you. And gnosis is the struggle between the ego and the soul. It's not supposed to be easy. You're fighting to maintain awareness. And here they make their thesis. The whole point is to redirect their attention away from reading the foundations of the Hyperborean wisdom. Who's the author? I liked this. Remember, you got to be honest with yourself. What are you? Is it because you like it? Does it tickle your soul? I liked this idea. So if Felipe Moyano is not the real author, who is? I liked this idea. Who knows? But clearly the information could only have come from the SS. Someone must have brought it to Argentina after 1945, and the maps included, dated 1980. Someone compiled them based on information the SS already possessed before 1939. And here the question then arises, who would be so familiar with the strategic movements taking place in China and North Africa? Who else but a pilot specifically trained to master Asian and African languages who, to top it all off, was specifically trained in psychosocial strategy by the SS. He'd be in charge of traveling the world to carry out the survey of the regions reflected in choreographic maps. Anyone who has read The Strange Adventure or Dissertations will immediately know who we are referring to. And if you can't figure it out, they are referring to the man that the world loves to hate. The man vilified by history in the 20th century. All right, what else now? They propose an allegory, just like Nimrod likes to do. They make an analogy to the story of Nimrod where you win by losing. Because losing on the material plane is not a spiritual loss. Anything you lose on the material plane is not a loss for the spirit. So they make an allegory. There's a bad guy who controls all the publishing houses, who's got lots of money. And then there's a detective who discovers what the bad guy with lots of money is doing. And he prepares a document to prove it. And then the bad guy finds out with spies about the detective, but the detective has ensured that no matter what, even if they get rid of him, the documents detailing the bad guy's doings will come out. So even if they get him, he'll win by losing. So the bad guy orders that they hunt him down. And the bad guy knows that he's got so much control over the public that they would have a hard time believing the story. But the detective thought, well, there'll be a little bit of people that believe it. And if I make an introductory document that's easy to understand for the masses, they'll be able to comprehend the main document. So the criminals endeavor to take the introductory document to change its meaning. They modify it and distort it in an attempt to mislead the masses that get a hold of it. And in this way, they establish the spies, the bad guys, as the author of both the introductory document, which has been tampered with, and the main documents. And the first document then contaminates their minds with culture and makes it more difficult for them to read the main document. And by the time they get to the main document, it's tedious, dry, bland, and not as attractive as the introductory document with its culture. Ultimately, the public will accept the spy as the author of the works, and they'll be fascinated and think he must be so smart. And that's the synthesis of the allegory. They say that the main document with evidence of the bad guy's crime is the fundamentals. The introductory document should have been The Strange Adventure of Dr. Arturo Signagal, Dissertations of Kurt von Superman on the Hyperborean Wisdom in the SS, and the Manual of Psychosocial Strategy, and the Synarchist Siege. The distorted document is The Mystery of Belagina Vilka. And the spy who doctored the original document is Luis Felipe Moyano. So that's the thesis. That's the thesis of this conspiracy, theorized by this anonymous contributor. I haven't finished Volume 2, but I believe they're talking about it here. They say that we're meant to suppose that Signago would found the Octra of Cordoba, which implies he falls into the clutches of the Synarchy, which I agree with. Creating a group. Creating a group. I've always been against. I've never wanted to start a Discord server for my viewers. Never wanted to organize. I see that as a weakness An opening, setting yourself up. Like those people in Arkansas, all gathering in one area, like-minded individuals. You're all lined up, all together, all in one spot. You know how vulnerable that makes you? So Dr. Signal Nagal, we're supposed to believe, did that and founded the Octra. Naive. Not very strategic. I agree with that. Yeah. Croy Romero wrote that book on the Taoism of Hyperborean wisdom, orienting you to other ideas instead of just the fundamentals. Argument there. And they cite the beginning of Secret History, where the charismatic center is not on Earth. The charismatic center is the leader, the guide that we all connect to psychically. Octra in Cordoba. And they get into some of the forgeries. The House of Tarshish. They get into Tarsus. The whole thing of Tarsus in Belchina Vilca, they say, is completely forged. That's made up by Moyano to distort and disorient. That's a large assertion in this document. Tarsus, the line of Tarsus, the family line, the Noyo, Bira and Bersha. I say all that's baloney. All that's just a distraction. It's just narrative fluff. Has nothing to do with the fundamentals. And Tarshish is a Hebrew word. So there's that. There's no mentioning of the stone men in the fundamentals. There are references to the novel, the magic novel, in the fundamentals, but there's nothing of stone men or Tarsus, which at the very least is odd. Something about gold. And this is all just reinforcing the point that it's nonsense. They called the Octra a plaza, but the plaza isn't of physical space. The plaza is accessed mentally. And then he names them again: Brondino, Croy, Aragon, Santa Cruz, Rey, Carena. Flooding social media with videos and documents with the purpose of disorienting chosen ones, instead of talking about the fundamentals, promoting their study and understanding. They bury it under cultural crust: Taoism, yoga, psychology, Nietzsche, Gurdjieff, martial arts, Peronism, Hinduism, Buddhism, UFOs, the Virgin of Candelaria, the Virgin of La Vega. They are, yeah, those are all cultural symbols. Culture, the weapon of the enemy. I cite Lucas Carena making the work Jesus Christ, Hyperborean Prince, pompously calls himself the Ghibelline. Croy Romero, or Herman Croy, drinking vodka with him. Croy promising to reveal the secrets of Felipe that only he knows to those who remain loyal. But occasionally women also fall prey to this narcissistic individual, and he tries to seduce them through WhatsApp and Facebook. I can believe that. Croy was a thirsty steroid injector. Somebody's watching me. Mystery Bellacina Vilca is an edition by Moyano and his cronies. Talk about the Noyo, Lanfranconi, who claims in an audio recording that Moyano wanted to execute him. The Pope execute a Noyo? The answer is that Lanfranconi was neither Noyo nor Moyano. He was a pontiff. And more could be said about Lanfranconi, but let's just say this Noyo told readers of the fundamentals, those who wanted to know more or clarify concepts, to set themselves on fire by pouring gasoline. How could a Noyo say something like that? Because he's neither Noyo, nor has he read or understood the fundamentals. He was an imbecile. And then we get back to Croy. Croy claimed that Lanfranconi was the Noyo of the order. And Croy was addicted to alcohol and orgies, ran a gym, sold and injected steroids with his buddies. So partaking in the pleasures of the flesh, allegedly. Croix, according to Croix, Lanfranconi was the Noyo, and Lanfranconi was known to reply that he was not the Noyo, which caused Croix, at least on one occasion, to say, "Listen carefully, Jorge, I'm the one who chooses Noyo." And all these individuals were connected to Argentine intelligence and police, and regularly carried firearms. It's very materialistic, very much materially focused is what's being alleged, with a lot of details. And then they talk about Stockholm Syndrome, to where the initiates that were taken in fall in love with the people like Croix and them, even though they're being abused, and Croix's trying to get with their wives and stuff. And he mentions the 5th book, which was destroyed, the Synarchic Siege. And this book would supposedly be able to prevent, or destroying this book would have helped those that were trapped and deceived. But destroying the book made it so that they would never find out that they were joining part of the Synarchy. Block the exit of the labyrinth. Oh, I liked this part too. When Milei won the 2023 election, he created the SIDE, SIDE, and they cite ancient SIDE was founded in the 7th century by Greek colonists from the Aeolian city of Kyme, and it means pomegranate. I remember that from Bellicina Velka, referring to the mother goddess Anatolia. SIDE is the new intelligence agency of the Milei government. Turns the nation into a police state. Yes. And there's links too. So it's a good nicely put together thesis. And they talk about his mother, Felipe Moyano's mother. And what she claimed about him, alleging that he read 5,000 books, learned everything about Kabbalah, he knew Hebrew, he had contact with U.S. intelligence and with the oligarchy, subservient to the synarchy in Argentina. They published the fundamentals, but almost as something secondary to the mystery of Belcina-Vilca. Yeah, I get that. It seems like culturally, comments and everything pushes the mystery of Belcina-Vilca, not the fundamentals. I have seen that. I can corroborate that. That does seem like the cultural phenomenon. And it used to be called the mystery of Hyperborean wisdom and changed to the mystery of Belcina-Vilca by, who did that? The vegans, Argentinian vegan group. And they elevate the Virgin Mary symbol, sacred symbol. Yeah. The Bolivian vegans. I've seen them. They're a large group, superstructure. Yep. By dwelling on worldly matters, on dramas that arise, you lose sight of the concepts of the fundamentals. Your gaze is diluted in trivial matters. Yeah. And see, even now I'm resisting the pleasure I'm getting from feeling validated. Because a lot of this resonates with me. But I have to be honest with myself about that. You set yourself up for deception when you allow yourself to be pleased by things. Just like when you allow yourself to feel pain by something, despair. Yeah. Like I just said. The enemy can sow a seed of doubt or unease or an aspiration, and later, coincidentally, the group or superior apostle may emerge culturally to integrate him, slowly and gently leading him into disorientation. Little by little, without realizing it, the Varia sinks as if treading on quicksand. He believes he is advancing in understanding the wisdom, but the truth is that the enemy is leading him through a new bend of the labyrinth each time he participates in cultural events. In this way, the will is not focused on reading and understanding the fundamentals, but instead dispersed in common, communal, communist activities, as if it were the USSR, where one must obey the dictates of the comrade, commissar of the moment, the superior, who sets himself up as the substitute for Luis Felipe Moyano. In short, once the master disappeared, the apostles, as if in a biblical sense, were in a state of agitation, accusing one another, threatening each other with death, etc. All of this evidently was planned beforehand. It was foreseen that the unrest into which the disciples of Jesus would be plunged would impel each of them to found their own small order, since they all considered themselves the legitimate heir of Felipe. That's why on my channel, I don't try really hard to gather a following. I just try to think about what's important. I try to make quality videos, but I want them to contribute to the return. I want to disseminate content which keeps people oriented. It's not about being a popular YouTuber, getting views, getting subscriptions. I mock it when I say stay tuned. It's a joke. That's a joke. Because I don't care about that. He talks about Croy again. He says, Croy would threaten people. He'd say, like, that year, every year he would threaten, that year, those who did not obey him would have the doors of wisdom closed to them. Like a priest threatening excommunication or condemnation. Using fear as a tactic. Yeah. The enemy wins when the Virya bends his will to the other. Each representative of these groups is an aspect of the demiurge. Sharpen your vision and understand that you are being put in contact with the demiurge through the representative of the myth in each synarchic cell. That's why it's difficult to read the fundamentals. They give you an easy alternative. And they get into some of Mystery Bell Vilka's distortions. They play into the sacralizing group. Yes. So the people that came from other schools of occultism that looked to a sage or a leader to venerate and have reverence for. They play into that, making pawns in the game. Yeah, they made the analogy that Felipe was like Jesus, the son of Mary, the author of the fundamentals. So that narrative just mirroring Judeo-Christian theology. They talk about the original deception. They tried to deceive us by replacing Christos Lucifer with Jesus Christ, and they didn't succeed. So now they made another attempt, replace the true author of the fundamentals with Luis Felipe Moyano. Call him the pontiff. The son of an immaculate conception, Rosalia, whom they call Mary, who was abducted by UFOs. Yeah. Moyano's picture on the homepage. I've seen some of this stuff. Not all of it, but I have seen it. Put his picture next to the IDs of 2 Drug Enforcement Agency agents. And they make the joke, they only forgot to include a selfie from his parties on Epstein's Island. That's playing into the culture a little bit with that one, though. They talk about how, yeah, Vroon. What's a Vroon? They don't say Vroon in the fundamentals. They say rune. So what's a Vroon? What's Vrunic? Is it different than a rune? Where's the V come from? Does it come from the V in Brondino's victory rune, which the toroidal distorts? The victory rune, yeah. I've seen that one. I've heard some things about it too. Varunas. Supposedly, according to Mystery of Belcina-Vilca, the name comes from Varuna. Varuna is a god in the Hindu pantheon. In its etymological description, in the Hindu tradition, the theonym Varuna, or Devanagari, is described as a derivation of the verbal root V, to cover or surround, to restrict or bind, by means of the suffix uya, for an interpretation of the name as the one who covers or binds, in reference to the cosmological ocean or river that surrounds the world, but also in reference to the binding of the universe, universal law, or ita. So Varuna is the one who covers or restricts by universal law. So the Varuna is the demiurge. And they tie that into Moyano as a distortion, an intentional disorientation, covering and obscuring the truth. Varuna, Vroon, instead of just rune. It's like a insult. And he talks about how much Moyano Moyano's contributions talked about the Druids. Dozens of pages of encyclopedia articles about the Druids. And the Druids would cover and obscure the truth. Runas are not Votans. The runes belong to Votan. Vruna is a malicious and intentional distortion by Moyano and his cronies, according to this contribution. He talks about all this. None of that was in the fundamentals. From Cordoba, Noyo, the House of Tarsus, the Wise Sword, the Virgin of Vega, the Virgin of Candelaria, Bera and Bersha, none of that was in the fundamentals. And the intention was to get the Viryas to adopt a passive attitude. And it says, Felipe Moyano had 12 apostles, just like in the Bible. Cruz, Cano, the veganist leaders. Yes, most Viryas claim difficulty understanding the fundamentals. It's hard. It is hard. I'm not even like acting like it's not. But I'm going to keep reading it. I'm going to keep reading until I do understand it. Grind. It's not a coincidence. By reading Mystery of Bellicina Vilca first, they have contaminated the blood and they have contaminated their blood, and the symbols have been degraded, that is, materialized. Everything has been placed outside of themselves in the world. And that's why there's so much emphasis on performing rituals with stones. It'd be something like attempting to force a miracle by focusing on the external ritual. See if something happens. And that's total ignorance and disregards what the fundamentals teach. Externalizes everything. Is what the Mystery of Bellicina Vilca does. Talks about the Druids again. If we examine this in the original, The Strange Adventure of Dr. Arturo Signago, which is cited in the fundamentals, we see that Bellicina speaks of the Golan and Arturo when referring the letter to Kurt, and provokes Kurt's reaction, who roars in German the following: "The Druids, of course, if they constitute the other traitorous race that Anael named in China." Where are Bira and Bursa mentioned? Nowhere. It's an invention of Moyano's to sow terror among Mr. Abelichinovilca's readers, to poison their minds. According to a report, some members of the Octra lived in fear because they thought they would be attacked by the fictional characters Bera and Bersha. Hence our position that they were intentionally portrayed as almost invincible beings. Moyano wants that we fear the druids because he is a druid. That's why he said that he was seen, that's why it was said that he was seen visiting the synagogue in Cordoba wearing a kippah to show his submission to Jehovah Satan. And that's why they made pilgrimages, forcing the members of the Cordoba Octra to accompany him to the Virgin of Candelaria, which is located on a ranch in the Cordoba Mountains. And what is there? It's not a coincidence, a Jesuit temple. Cordoba is the heart of Argentina, representing the Anahata chakra. That's why if you visit Capilla del Monte, the town, at its foot, you'll see the synarchic references everywhere. I'm not familiar with any of this. Star of David, visible on public signs. And you might ask, why is this important? Because next to Capilla del Monte is Los Cocos, the town where Luis Moyano supposedly developed Mystery Abelichinovilca. Right next to Oritorco. That's why Tagliavore says that we must go to Cordoba, which the apostles repeat, because the objective is to lead the chosen ones astray, to disorient them. The other thing, Mystery of Abelichinovilca never mentions the Min. It always says blood memory. Navutan, too. Fundamentals never mention Navutan. It's made up. It's a distortion of Votan. It's fabricated by Moyano and his intelligence group, on which they based the Ama cult in Bolivia. The statue worshipped by the vegans in Bolivia. And you can watch that on YouTube. Navutan and Ama do not appear anywhere in the fundamentals. They're cultural objects created by them. Symbols to worship. Croy. Croy, who we've already seen, is addicted. Gather him up. It's all a superstructure in which you've been captured and held psychologically captive. The apostles use all kinds, the apostles like Aragon and Romero, they could be described as narcissistic in today's terms. He always tries to aggrandize himself appear large and powerful, like a very inflated balloon. Where's that from? And then the sacralizing type will see them and get absorbed. Anything but reading and accepting the fundamentals. Reading and understanding it. Anything. That's the goal, supposedly. Send them in any direction but that. Yeah, they talk about Croy again. Croy is apparently a horn dog. Everything is based on threat and terror. Fear contaminates the blood and makes it impure. And that impurity prevents understanding the fundamentals and creates a psychological dependence. So they cling to the representative. Another detail, apparently Croy, according to reports, stated and continues to state that the novel is for women, but the fundamentals are for men. Which would imply the female Virya is prevented from reading and understanding the fundamentals. So hypocritical for him to say that. More like a minotaur blocking the way. And they're perverts. Mythuna, yeah. I don't watch them, so I don't know, but excessive interest on social media regarding that aspect, the Mythuna. And yeah, if you've read the fundamentals, you know that the representative channels the myth and channels the demiurge. And there's manipulations in the second letter to the elect, apparently. Which, if you compare the Quinta Dominica version with the original typed version, they added something to the end of the letter to try and prevent the Virya from helping other Viryas read and understand the fundamentals. The 2021 veganist version is also adulterated. Finally, in conclusion, who are the Knights of the Toroidal? Where is the order? Do they have a phone number, an address, a bank account? How do we contact them? Do we have to write an email? Do we have to go camping in the Sierras de Cordoba? Do we need to go see UFOs in Uritorco? That's the influence of the Mysterine of Belcina Vilca. Charismatic contact is 100% transcendent to the material universe of the One. There's no cultural intermediary necessary. And the cultural intermediary is an obstacle to charismatic contact. And then they list every single apostle Gustavo Brondino, Herman Croy, Lucas Carrena, Santa Cruz, Victoria Cano, Lupus Feliz, Laura Ferro, made the Atlantean University, where she profited. Roberto Naville, or Judas, Max Gaorsi, or Canal Origen, Heru Aragon, the Archicephala, Jorge Sclavi, or the Noyo of Souls and Minds, and Juan Pablo Rey. Supposedly a priest, don't be a priest, of the order of Melchizedek. There's no need to read any other book than the fundamentals. And then part 4, misrepresentations of the mystery of Belcina Vilca. What is being misrepresented? And it's clear, they make it clear that the misrepresentations are the least important part. Because the main problems are how prevalent mystery of Belcina Vilca is culturally, and that Moyano stole the identity of the actual authorship. But these are the misrepresentations they cite as well. The original version of Kurt's dissertations had a third dissertation, which was expurgated from the text after the originals were stolen around 1980. And Kurt explains why the enemy would even have an interest in stealing them, because they would reveal information about Himmler and the SS mission, which would cause the fabricated narrative of the mystery of Belcina Vilca to crumble. Because Moyano changes the name August Fell in the original text to Oscar Fell because it was a subtle reference to August Kupacek, an effort to cover up facts of spiritual affiliation, silence and block the memory of the Fuhrer, and mysticism. And in the mystery of Belcina Vilca, it says that the charismatic center is a house in Tucumán. Page 392 of the digital version, edited in 2011. But the charismatic center is not a house, but rather the man himself. They proposed it was he who deciphered the stenography using the Enochian texts. The next distortion, they say on page 666, he makes the reader relive the destruction of Obersalzberg, which is where the eagle's nest was located. And they say, Mystery Velcina constantly makes us relive the destruction of our magical places and the extermination of the pure blood. That's his intention, to make us relive the terror and pain. Invoke Metatron. Offer pain. And yeah, they had that whole chapter. It's like day 27, I think, 27th day, delving into Hebrew Kabbalah and the Sephiroth. The whole chapter just talking about it. The Mystery Velcina is supposed to be a Hyperborean work, and they're doing Hebrew Kabbalah. I'm pretty sure it's 27th day. Why are we talking about this for a whole chapter? He says it's like a boast. Do we really need to know what precious stones the heavenly Jerusalem is made of? And we want to mention Lanfranconi's suspicious attitude towards Tagliavore and Moiano. Moiano supposedly wanted to sacrifice Lanfranconi. And that is common knowledge. It's audio which is circulated. Audio 8 from a channel called Kairos Hyperborean SPD. Listen before it gets deleted. Trips they made to Patagonia to perform rituals with crucifixes. Once the reader's been influenced by Mystery Velcina, they find it difficult to retain the concepts of the fundamentals or forget them quickly. I didn't experience that. I mostly just felt like, why am I reading this? I already got it. What am I reading this one for? This is like a backtrack. But after reading Mystery Velcina, people say, it's incredibly difficult, very dense, very slow, very abstract. And this document asserts that that reaction is the effect of blood impurification. You get phagocytized by the cultural structure, and your vision's all blurry and you can't get out and see clearly. Dissertations. In this document, when they speak of the dissertations, they're referring to the original text, not the dissertations of Roberto Navigli, who's also an agent of the Synarchy. Perpetrate a deception and give it cultural preeminence. Make sure that when the various searches on Google, Facebook, or YouTube for the Hyperborean wisdom, the first thing that comes up is the mystery of Belcina Vilca, or that Moyano is the author of the fundamentals. In the Chancellery talk, it's revealed to Kurt that the material world we inhabit is actually the mind of Jehovah Satan. We are prisoners within it, enslaved, forced through deception, through the parasitism of our will to give meaning to entities in order to produce culture. The charismatic connection leads to his blood purification shortly after. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Narrated through the episode when he is meditating on karma and perceives a voice, an episode that incidentally is distorted by Moyano. One need only compare that Anael or Kiev says in the telepathic message in both versions. And the synchronicity with Conrad Hein, whom Moyano will later also try to distort by calling him Tarstein, is a crude deception to reinforce his narrative of the House of Tarshish. Regarding Hein's house, the same occurs. Compare both versions. In Strange Adventure, nothing is said about the people of Tarsus traveling to Berlin through an opening in time and space. That's an addition by Moyano, who bases the 8 lineages of the second dissertation, decided to pass off Tarsus as one of those lineages. But there's no proof of this. It's a malicious invention of RCP. Look at it for yourselves, verify it, see everything they added to contribute to the narrative of Moyano as pontiff, heir to the House of Tarsus, or Turdes, as Brondino and other falsifier call it. Nefarious as he is ignorant. And just in case there are any doubts, Gregorstrasse doesn't exist in Berlin. Look it up on Google. There's no such street. It's a subtle reference, like August fails a thread or a clue. The author's way of subtly communicating that such a street doesn't exist is to name it after a traitor, an SA man named Gregor Strasser, who was part of the conspiracy that resulted in the Night of the Long Knives. In the 1934 film Victory of Faith, flanked by Ernst Röhm. In the 1935 film Triumph of the Will, Röhm's disappeared. He's been executed along with Gregor Strasser and the rest of the traitors. And this fact is mentioned in one of his proclamations. This means that the original texts are written in code. They're trying to imply that such a street doesn't exist, that these are fictional details based on real events, a narrative device. In this way, the usurpers fell into their own trap because we and so many others will now realize the deception. Nimrod won by losing. As could be expected, the enemy was lashed with the silk whip. That is to say, the mystery bell Chinavilka itself includes parts taken from the strange adventure that subtly suggest the texts are a means to an end, delivering a Gnostic message. This reveals that Moyano's literalist narrative, that he actually received a sword that arrived from Spain to Cordoba, is false. That's why they took such care to create drawings of the supposed sword and always place it on the cover to create the illusion in the reader's mind. We don't know what the original text cover would have been like. Demiurge just copies. And perverts and distorts. So the thesis is that the Synarchy took the original and distorted it and perverted it, copied it, and plagiarized it. Just like the Demiurge. And I think they talk about Volume 2, which, again, I have not read yet. The woman of Agartha abducts Signagal from space-time, and he enters into charismatic contact with the divine. And then he communicates with the divine through paper letters. I haven't read it, so I'm just assuming that's part of it. I'll probably still read it. It's coming in the mail, just to see. And they talk about what I just talked about, Pyrrhina and the Medusa myth, and terror. I need to read The Strange Adventure now, the original text. Medusa is there to paralyze the hero Perseus, preventing him from escaping. This is explained in Volume 8. The playful attitude reacts with fear and avoids combat, while the sacralizing attitude reacts with the volitional paralysis of the self, leading to submission. In either case, the self cannot achieve liberation. That is why the ritual of Tarsus, in which they went to die of terror at the sight of the physical image of the goddess Pyrrhina, is a satanic addition by Moyano to disorient the chosen one, as it has nothing to do with what is taught in the fundamentals. And they talk about the valid message. In Lemuria, there was a technique for creating a stone shell as protection from physical blows. But there are no stone men, no Noyos and Vrayas in the sense that Moyano gives them. Speaking of the Virgin, who is the true Virgin? Because it certainly isn't the Virgin of Agartha from Moyano, who is sometimes Phria Caliber, and sometimes Amma, and sometimes Pyrrhina. It's intentional, sowing confusion. Mother Amma is Mother Frigga, the woman of flesh, the illusion of matter. It's stated in the fundamentals. Frigga wants to give birth to the children in Midgard, to give meaning to the world, to perpetuate the enslavement of the spirits with the mind of Jehovah Satan. It's surprising no one's pointed out that Vraha is a concept that appears several times in the fundamentals. And it quotes it, the archaemonic technique will therefore allow the isolation of the microcosm from the macrocosm, gaining its own time and space. Immortality, the microcosm or physical body, will have been transmuted into Vraha, the incorruptible matter. And that's where Moyano got the word Vraya, to sow confusion. The acoustic cabal, he calls the Vrunas of Navutan. Nowhere in the fundamentals is Vrunas mentioned, nor Navutan. Again, this is from volume 2, I think. Peter of Crete, presented as the husband of Valentina, from whom Leto of Tarsus and later Balicina Vilca would descend. Maybe that's not from volume 2. A fabricated past like what the druid Kelly did. Why do we highlight Peter of Crete? Because Crete, the island where the Minotaur lived, the monster that blocks the exit from the labyrinth. If Medusa fails to paralyze the Viria with fear, there's always the Minotaur. It's the egregore that Moyano created in the plaza, which the members of the Octra, in their ignorance, thought was a liberated plaza, outside space and time. How ridiculous is that? A building made of stone and brick. The plaza. Consider the strange adventure of Dr. Arturo Signagal was simply a short story entirely Gnostic containing the most significant parts of Kurt's life. Obviously, the names were changed since the surname Superman doesn't exist. It's a play on words. Superman, Uberman. I say that the plagiarists weren't well versed in German. That's why they didn't realize that. They presented it as a real last name. And then they talk about the material ritual, which I didn't know, and I don't know anything about, but apparently they actually did that, the Pyrrhina ritual in the Octra, is what they're saying. Yeah, in Cordoba. Lascivious naked dancers tempt the aspirant with the hot love of the carnal karma of the traitorous siddhas, and then are petrified by a carved idol, a goddess, which would be nothing more than literally a large stone. So he tries to scare them, and fear contaminates the blood, makes it impure, and binds it to matter. They present the argument, no, you don't understand, because that terror is the terror of the soul. Bira and Bersha explain that. First, those two don't exist. Second, we don't care what the druids say, because we don't care what the demiurge has to say. And third, that's an addition added by Moyano. It's a subtle substitution that most of us have swallowed whole. And you can't get rid of it until you read the fundamentals. Tarsus, Men of Stone. And they get back to Medusa again. Nimrod's warriors would bear the Hyperborean sign of HK, the fire rune that no immortal demon can face, much less the 200 Hyperboreans of the dark face. That sign represents for them the truth, the inevitable reminder of their abandoned divine origin. And like the Gorgon, they cannot look upon it without suffering grave danger. Medusa here would be an example that is put in place so that the reader understands that just as Perseus cannot look Medusa straight on because he would be petrified, the 200 Hyperboreans of the dark face cannot look the Hyperborean sign straight on. Getting back to Medusa. According to mythology, Medusa is one of the three sisters called Greyas, who are not three Vryas or three wise warriors. That is surely taken by Moyano from volume 11 of the Fundamentals by misrepresenting the three functions. Gorgons, who would be the daughters of gods or monsters of the ocean, Phocis and Ceto, which would explain the fascination of the members of the Octra with sea monsters like the Kraken and Lovecraftian monsters, Dagon. The term Gorgon could be etymologically related to the concept of mermaid, which appear in the myth of Ulysses, which is mentioned in passing in The Strange Adventure when Signagel returns to his apartment after talking with Professor Ramirez. That's where Moyano perpetrates another modification. You can verify this yourself by comparing the two versions. We've copied and added the part here in its entirety so you can clearly appreciate his intention to always highlight the House of Tarsus and the myth of Perseus. No, I was definitely not the hero Perseus who, according to Bellicena, descended into hell itself to conquer wisdom. But I wasn't only unlike those mythological heroes, I didn't even remotely resemble any of the lords of Tarsus. They knew how to resolve all kinds of situations. For millennia, they had faced a hellish conspiracy, inconceivable to the ordinary human mind. They endured numerous attempts at extermination, emerging victorious from every trial, overcoming every danger, and triumphing over the enemy. And they succeeded because, according to Bellicena, their hearts were harder than diamond and possessed the certainty of the eternal spirit, and because they experienced an essential hostility toward the powers of matter, which allowed them to display indescribable strength against the enemy. They had remained on the margins of history, striving to preserve the legacy of the Hyperborean wisdom of the White Atlanteans. They were initiates who acted consciously, aware of their spiritual responsibility. They fulfilled the strategy of the gods, and the gods addressed them. They guided me. I, on the other hand, was incomparably weaker. I did not distinguish as clearly as they did between the soul and spirit, although reading the letter produced as a revelation of the spiritual self, as the undeniable intuition of the truth of the spirit chained in matter. But for now, it was only a spiritual intuition. Nor did I receive an esoteric tradition, an inherited wisdom, and much less did I have the opportunity to be initiated into the true mystery of the Spirit. I did, however, seek the truth for many years, as I will recount later, and I even came to discover for myself the reality of the universal synarchy. But it never occurred to me to fight against such satanic forces, nor did I ever imagine that it was necessary, essential, inevitable, a matter of honor. On the contrary, as the well-known tango expresses, I surrendered without a fight. I let sentimentality soften my heart, let the decadent customs of the century permeate me. I tolerated and lived with the most abominable realities, the very ones in which Western culture is slowly sinking without reacting. And I never reacted because I lacked moral reflexes. I was as if asleep, perhaps deep down, as now I was afraid to fight and react, to facing forces too powerful. Oh God, they had turned me into a useful idiot, a stupid pacifist. But now things would change. If destruction was necessary, I would destroy. If killing was necessary, I would kill. I would do anything before compromising with the enemy of the spirit, described by Bellicina Vilca. I just needed help. Some kind of spiritual help. In short, I was determined to go all the way, to play, as I said, all my strength for the cause of the House of Tarsus. But I was also realistic, aware of my limitations, and I knew that without help, I could get nowhere. But to whom could I turn for such help? I couldn't decide at that moment, but that's what I'll be thinking about for the next few hours. So you get it, he's implying that as a reader, you might feel like you need help. Weaker. He said he was weak. He needed help. He didn't receive an esoteric tradition or get initiated by an order. And it's reiterated. Initiation is entirely transcendent of time and space. You can be in your room alone and be initiated by the gods. That's it. That's all. You don't need Brondino. You don't need Croy. You don't need to send money to the veganists or to Aragon or fly to Cordoba or anything like that. You are welcome. All of that is cultural, a deception of the enemy. Veil of Maya. Oh yeah, and on fear, he feared forces too powerful. Fear. Enabling the idea of being afraid. And the line about if it's necessary, he would do that. This person asserts that that's to create the expectation in the reader that they have to be violent. Like when allegedly Orlando Croy was ordered by the Octra to commit a a deal. And it says that's not confirmed, but on some audio recordings, supposedly what happened is Croy was ordered to plant a boom, and he obediently placed it without question, causing a building to collapse in Cordoba. So that's alleged, but that's the connection that they're making there. And that's why Mystery Bella Chain is so long, because it's filled with garbage. More dismantling the Medusa hoax. Well, Medusa doesn't represent wisdom, because wisdom isn't outside, it's within. Perseus is a Viria, and a Viria who wants to be free has to fight the potencies of matter. He has to fight what's outside. Matter is on the outside. Medusa is on the outside. And Medusa represents the fear of the unknown that tries to paralyze the self when seeking its way out of the mental labyrinth. So here Medusa is a sacred symbol that emerges when the self is at the right angle, the mystery of the right angle, when it's understood the fundamentals. Athena gives Perseus the shield to see Medusa reflected, to not look at her directly, which means not to identify with the sacred symbol. So like when in the balloon allegory, Mr. Abaro, which I realize now is a play on the word aberrant, Mr. Aberrant confronts the sacred symbol. He does not identify with it, but sees it indirectly and bags it, grabs the balloon, magic bag. And it's still dangerous, but it's necessary to resign it runically. That's the truth of the myth. Medusa represents the sacred symbol, which is dangerous and presents the threat of absorbing the subject, Mr. Abaro, or Perseus. But Mr. Aberrant and Perseus just reach out and nab it, even though it's dangerous, and bag it for later. And as Moyano claims, the weapon Wotan gives Perseus is not a sickle, but like a curved sword. Mythological weapon. The decapitation is not literal, it's a Gnostic metaphor. And Moyano degrades it by placing it in the context of a military conquest. So Perseus is a Viria who's conquered fear. He has not been phagocytized by the sacred symbol. Medusa is not the goddess of wisdom, Athena is, or Isa, Freya, but not a monster that paralyzes the Viria with terror. Effort must be made to understand the fundamentals. Gnosis is a product of the struggle between the self and the soul. It's not meant, it's just not easy. The Mystery of Bellicina Vilca is an easy read. Gnosis is not easy. There has to be an inner struggle. That's from the fundamentals. There has to be struggle. And he says right after that, there has to be a struggle, but that is not advocating mental disorder. It just means it's a grind. It's a challenge. Yeah. Moyano's apostles capitalize on the herd mentality of the masses, and you can see that in YouTube comments on their channels. These channels just serve to keep you looping in the labyrinth, keep you occupied with the chase, just the chase of more. Searching Hyperborean in the search bar, finding more content, finding more videos, make it more easy to digest, make it easy. Keep you occupied with that chase. It's not nothing internal. You're not sitting down contemplating. You're just scrolling Hyperborean content. What's this guy say? What's this guy say? Did this guy write any books? Wonder what this book says. I bet this book's easier to read than the fundamentals. The memory of the blood cannot surface if one's mind is occupied. Can't be found if it's occupied by watching Leo Messi play football, putting on makeup, highlighting your hair, onanism. It's inner action. And the balloon, the allegory of the balloon, it's an inner action. Attention. It's not external action. The tension is not external action channeled into an archaeological type of a perception. Something like an introspection that attempts to excavate with the inner eye. It's something like the water pressure that makes a fountain jet upwards from underground. And here they talk about the House of Tarsus. Where's that come from? What do we got here? Yeah, what I said earlier. Tarsus is Tarshish, which is in the Hebrew Bible. And that is Felipe Moyano's invention. And it quotes the Bible. Esther, verse 14. Those following him were Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, yada yada. And in 1 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 10, sons of Bilhan, Benjamin, Zethan, Tarshish. Tarshish is said to have exported large quantities of precious metals to Phoenicia and Israel. Targum of Jonathan and several passages in the Septuagint and the Vulgate translates Tarshish as Carthage. The Jewish Portuguese scholar the Jewish Portuguese scholar Isaac Barbanel described Tarshish as the city formerly known as Carthage and now Tunis, and that's on Wikipedia. Tarshish could refer to the Hebrew lineage or to places where Semites or Carthaginians lived, especially regions where precious metals were produced and later traded with Israel and the Phoenicians. And you would think a Hyperborean book, Tarsus, would be the opposite of metals, precious material, is what this person asserts. Okay. This one's pretty low-hanging fruit argument. Is that people hate that the fundamentals have been released in audio form with AI. Like, the whole book has been released. The whole 2 volumes have been released. But it's an AI production, and people bash that in the comments. And this section just argues that that's enemy tactic, just to keep people from trying to listen and understand. Because what if you're deaf? Yada, yada, yada. Or, I'm sorry, what if you're blind and that's the only way you can access it? Yada, yada, yada. I hate AI, so I get it. I can argue both sides there, but that's why I started reading on my other live streams the actual fundamentals in the first place, is because I wanted to disperse it as a human being. And this talks about the guide. The actual charismatic center used John Dee's Enochian writings to decipher the stenography, understand it, and re-encode it into the fundamentals of the Hyperborean wisdom. That's the assertion here. The actual pontiff deciphered John Dee's work And that is what we're reading when we read the fundamentals. At this time, in the age of the Spirit, it was meant to be discovered at this time, the fundamentals in the 20th century, dispersed by the pontiff at the end of the Kali Yuga so we could understand it. And they say that he did it. That's what the Imperial Messiah, that's part 5. That's what I couldn't remember, what this part was about. He waged total war in hell, the most terrible and radical war recorded in history, to unveil the enemy, awaken us, and charismatically lead us toward freedom. And that is why there is a conspiracy against the Hyperborean wisdom to obscure the truth with hundreds of irrelevant topics that only serve to disorient. And the Synarchy tries to make us believe that the pontiff is an intelligence agent, a collaborator of the United States government in the form of a DEA officer and Israel through the DAIA, Department of Israeli, whatever. That's what they want us to believe. It's a very, very valid argument. Has some weight to it. And supposedly in 1985, he founded an order, a psychological operation. Even the word order, like a command, submit, be a servant. He founded a psyop in Cordoba, a Jesuit base, usurped a priestly function, pretended to be the Pope, in Los Cocos near Mount Uritorco, concocted the mystery of Belchina-Vilca, in order to disorient you away from the fundamentals. Yeah. Moyano calls Columbus Holy Quiblón. So he venerates Columbus. And you know what he says about Columbus, too. He says, and you know what he says about Columbus, but he calls him, devotes a large section of the book to Columbus and calls him Holy Quiblón. Yes. Laugh at the illusion of Satan. Don't be saddened. They're clowns. These people, the apostles, the priests. these material puppets. But they say if you're going to read it, read the original typewriter version. And those are accessible. Those are free to download. You don't have to buy the publications. The Strange Adventure of Dr. Arturo Signagal. Dear reader, if you've come this far, we want to remind you that they fear us. You are what they fear. And that's why they try to keep us deceived. They don't want us to remember the truth. They don't want us to understand the fundamentals of the Hyperborean wisdom and overcome the mindset rational to transcend space-time. There's nothing the agents of the Synarchy fear more than a Virya who reads the fundamentals. The entire cultural strategy is based on this, on preventing you from reading and understanding them. Because you would no longer be what you have been circumstantially until now, a man, but you could become a god. The passive attitude of convincing yourselves that this doesn't apply to you is part of the cultural strategy. It's the soul trying to pacify the self. For you, the fundamentals were written. For you, a metaphysical struggle is being waged. For you, millions upon millions died, and countless others lost everything, and yet still followed the charismatic center to the end. Did you get to the fundamentals only to back out? Don't. For we remind you that we live in the day of the Spirit. Everything is in our favor. Everything is ready. All that's required is to make the small effort to understand and read the fundamentals. And believe me, your soul will try to stop you by every means possible. And that's the warning of this work, the conspiracy against the Hyperborean wisdom, so that you don't be deceived. Mm-hmm. And he links his stuff. Time for the plug. Plugging it. We will not create a group. We will create a page, not a group, which is not the same thing on Facebook. If any of you want to create one, go ahead, do what you think is best, but please be aware. It's a bad idea. We do not control this group. And if it happens, and what is posted there has nothing to do with us. And it'll probably be filled with misinformation. If you create such a group, be responsible. Filter access to avoid agents who will show up and maintain order. Demand proof for any claims made by anonymous users. I've seen his YouTube channel. It's interestingly well produced. There's good production quality in his videos. Suspicious. But still Spanish, so who knows how many people are involved. I'm also in the Telegram. That's how I got this in the first place. Groups. Oh, and he talks about that silly movie scene. I haven't seen that movie. Maybe it's a good one. Edward Norton and Anthony Hopkins. That's on his YouTube channel. Quote from Volume 8 of The Fundamentals. Clearly, these are not men, but archetypes that evolve through men, and therein lies their danger. In the void of humanity that can be discerned behind each of these historical figures, it becomes clear that just as futile as seeking individuality in a collective professional is attempting to argue with them about their point of view. Yeah, that talks about professionals, people trained in their field, don't think. They're not individual people. They're trained what to think, not how to think. So there's no point in arguing with them. You might as well argue with a video online about whatever their profession is. They're just going to spew whatever it is they're trained in at you and react however they're trained to react to you. Useless and dangerous, because you don't argue with archetypes. They are inhuman by nature. And if they have taken possession of a man, they also dehumanize him, transforming him into a shell. With archetypes, only two attitudes are valid. Either one possesses enough willpower to resist their capture, or one must submit to them. The danger then lies in being directly trapped by the archetype, or in a personalized archetype, that is, a collective professional, suspecting that our ideas are not those that serve the good of the justice, religion, or country. The choice is the same in any case, either resist or submit. Very strong message there. And he calls you to go to the vegan movement in South America. There's the vegan Hyperborean group. And he warns of the forgeries that are going to happen to this particular thing that he just wrote. Again, like 5 days ago, April 25th, this was dated. Keep it in your records. This was made on April 25th, 2026. The burglars may come and release a counterfeit. That's not me. Use discernment, remain alert, and read the fundamentals. I like all this pep talk at the end, all this pre-game hype. Stormy times are upon us, and this is a promise. The truth will come to light. We will break down your walls. So that's the deal. Yeah. That's the deal. That's what I read last night. And always, I'm suspicious of being excited. Anything that's exciting, anything new, I have to think, is somebody trying to manipulate me? It was intriguing how validating it was for me. How much it validated things that I've felt before. When I feel pressured by people I consider friends, like loyal, loyal, very loyal to the cause, saying, hey, you gonna make a video on Bellicina Vilca? Or, hey, have you heard of Croy Romero? You read this book? You know, there's other books, you know, why don't you cover Julius Evola? Why don't you cover this? You talk about this. They're just like, no, you do it. You can make a YouTube video too. I'm going to do me. I'm going to do the fundamentals. So yeah, it was suspicious how validated I felt after reading that. Like it was just written for me. Suspicious. Am I being manipulated here? Was I being manipulated before? Which one is it? But what remains constant is my affinity for the fundamentals over the mystery of Bellicina Vilca. Before I read this and now, I feel the same way. I don't really need the mystery of Bellicina Vilca. I'm a completionist. I want to get every single achievement. So I went to read the mystery as being the last part of it, the last of the series. This document sheds new light on the topic. Interesting. I walk away with an alternate point of view now in regards to the mystery of Bellicina Vilca. But nothing changes as far as my orientation toward the origin. I'm still hostile toward the material plane. You could destroy my whole house. Oh no! You could destroy my whole house and I would go, ha ha ha. I'm still on my way home. I'm still on my way to the origin. Let go, just like that. Let go, all of it. Smile to give yourself courage. Yes, the fundamentals. I'm cool with the encouragement to go back to the fundamentals now, rather than focusing concentrating so hard on doing Bellicina Vilca and covering Bellicina Vilca in videos. I feel more emboldened to return to the fundamentals and attempt to help people understand that better, or attempt to disperse that wisdom. Because a lot of it is part of my fiber now, just part of my being. Every movement I'm making is strategic. I judge every thought that comes into my head. Is this thought serving me in my path, in my return, or is it not? Will this movement bring me closer to returning to the origin? Are these feelings that I'm having right now influencing me in a way that will send me back into confusion, into deception? Am I going to get sucked in to something that has no value whatsoever, no spiritual value? am I being valorous right now? Am I being affected by some deep subconscious fear? These are questions. Just ruminate. Every interaction, every choice I make, where is this coming from? That's all I have to talk about, I think. Thank you for staying true. Thank you for joining me. I hope I helped you. Like Lucifer.